to everybody. I don't know if you have any comments. I only had one, which was on the constable.
Talk on the minutes? You asked about the minutes?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look at them. They're
Okay.
this
My
morning.
hearing aids went out for repairs, so if I
Okay.
ask you to repeat.
Okay, I'll speak up louder. I would, did people have a chance to look at them? No, okay, so we're going to defer the minutes.
Yes.
We're going to defer,
They renamed the building after my mother, Marie Kelly, but I think it's really the Murray Kelly building.
As he checked the timing, I think it said 7:30 instead of 7 for the 17th.
in the minutes?
I could be
Okay.
wrong,
I think what we're going to do is everybody review the minutes. If you want to send your edits to me and only to me, I will incorporate them into the, and we'll approve them at the next meeting. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. I am actually going to suggest that we take things out of order a little bit today because we have a guest, and I want to be respectful of his time. So Dave Norton has joined us from the Recreation Committee. We really appreciate you joining us. Just to give you a little background about what we're doing is that the Government Review Committee is taking a look at all the elected boards and committees. And some of them we know because we're on them, and we've been able to say, oh, yeah, well, this is what they do, and this is how they do it. In order to be qualified, this is what you need. And others where we don't know, and so we've invited some of those boards in to talk to us and to answer some questions that we've prepared, kind of general questions for each group that we've talked to. And I'm going to let Jess drive that part of it. And as we get to understand what the Recreation Board is all about. So that's kind of what we are out to do at this point.
Okay. If you want to start with just a really quick intro of your role in the board, how long you've been on the board, and then our first question is, if you had to explain to a stranger on the street in one sentence what your board does, what would that be?
So my name's Dave Norton. I've been a Recreation Commissioner for 11 years. I'm now Vice Chair. I think I'll be chairperson starting next week.
Dave, can you pull the microphone
Oh, sure,
closer
I'm
to you?
sorry.
Thank you.
And you want me to explain what?
Yeah, if you had to explain to a stranger on the street in one or a few sentences what your board does, what would that be?
So the Recreation Commission is 3 elected officials and 2 appointed officials, one from school committee and one from planning board. And we oversee all parks in the management of 400 acres of properties. We also maintain all the schools' properties throughout town, all the maintenance of the buildings, outside maintenance of the buildings of all school properties, all parks, all schools. But the board, we're in charge of, so we have our director, Brendan Egan, who so if we were going to, the commission would be responsible for hiring a new director, or any on the budget process going through, coming from the town administration. We would go by their guidelines, but we would guide Brendan as we would vote on certain budgets and which way we would want the money to be allocated. It's a good board to be on. We do good things for the town. I'm sure you guys are all very well familiar with the Recreation Commission and what it does for the community.
Lots of things, for sure. And if you think about the most effective members your board either has now or has had in the past, in terms of, members who have really made a really big impact or really big had been there for a while and had been really successful with helping to continue to grow what the commission does. What do you think it was about that board member that helped make them really effective?
Well, I served on the board with Kevin Sullivan, who was on the board, I think the second longest in Burlington's history. I think he was on for almost 18 years. And Kevin was a lot of transformation between Wildwood Park, implementing, bringing on a new director. He helped me, which on budgets and stuff like that, certain areas we would want to target going forward, how we would want to change where some of our funding goes, coming up with plans for parks, how we want to target certain parks, and our programming, our director of programming, Kelly Lehman, we brought on a new assistant director, Kelly. She's been awesome. I think our therapeutic program is brand new since I've been on the board. It's something that's very important to my heart. The inclusion that we do in town for autistic children, anyone with disabilities, that's a big focus on the recreation, I would say, in the last 10 years since I've been on the board, and I think it's a very important part of our community going forward.
And what do you think has really helped drive a lot of that success? Do you think has there been just any sort of like partnering or collaboration with other boards or departments in town? Or was there a process that kind of helps really make the commission effective in implementing a lot of these new programs?
I think the commission works very well with our staff. We have very good open communication, and I think Brendan works very well with the town administration. When we're looking for stuff, if we're looking to expand the staff any which way, like when we came up with a new assistant director, that was something that we sort of implemented. We went to the town a couple of years before saying, this is something that we think we need going forward. So we let them know ahead of time, budget-wise, what we're looking for on the maintenance side. A lot of people, like we're having a meeting tonight with the school committee. We're trying to get maybe the schools to come on board with our fertilizer program on the schools to make, we've invested a lot of money into our parks, and we want to make sure that that the schools can get part of that program. It's two different type of fertilizer programs going on right now. So we work with all the other boards, school committee, obviously, the planning board is very important. And those get usually, Paul Raymond was on the board from planning board for a long time. Paul was instrumental. He loved being on the Recreation Commission, and he was obviously on the planning board for a very long time. So, so working with the school committee and the planning board is very important also.
And it feels like, especially with implementing new programs like therapeutic program, inclusion programs, details like fertilizer, being very naive to fertilizer, it feels like there would be a level of like expertise or experience that would be helpful. How do you all find or leverage or kind of make sure you have that expertise to help continue to guide what you all do forward?
Well, all our maintenance staff, our head maintenance staff have all gone to school.
So you partner very closely with them.
Yeah, so when we brought in this new program, we made sure that all our staff was going to be able to get schooled on, how to put the product down, how safe it is. And it's worked extremely well. Now, we just put a brand new high school baseball field that we just spent $750,000 on in the last couple of years. And so the schools are different than the parks, and we can already see the weeds coming into the parts of the brand new high school field. So when you spend that kind of money, you don't want to lose. And So, you know, that's a very important part, so, and we want to make sure it's safe. There's nothing more important in my life than children, you know, playing on our fields in our schools. So, you know, we want to make sure it's safe not only for the children, but for animals, you know, so we've definitely done our background check.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Quick, just follow-up question. As a board member, do you have to know that stuff? I mean, do you have people on
Me
the board?
personally?
Yeah.
I do not, I did not go to any of the schooling for that, no.
Okay.
No.
But, so
But,
you-
I mean, I have read up on it and stuff. I go more on Brendan's lead.
Yep.
You know, what they have to say and stuff like that, you know what I mean? But they're more of the leaders and, you know, they recommend to us what, you know, what they would want to do, and then we sort of, you know, we can agree with them or not agree with them, you know what I mean? So, but they've definitely done their background check on all that stuff.
yeah.
On a lot of the stuff that, I mean, working with Brendan, Kelly, the maintenance staff, we definitely, we're about a year ahead on everything we do. Like we would want to do Simon's Parko, but we know that's a big project. You know, when we bring a new staff member on, we just hired somebody for the inclusion program to work with Emma. That's a very important. So like, but we know that when we get our budget process, that we got to stay within the guidelines. So those are we got to come up with certain things, moving people around to come up to make sure that we're well within the budget guidelines, to make things work for the recreation. And I think we've done a very good job of doing that.
And is it okay if I add, it sounds like you essentially trust the experts to guide you as, you know, professionals in their fields, and
Yeah, I mean, they've all gone to school for, you know, everyone that's been hired in the recreation, on the programming side have all gone to universities that, it's a recreational-based program. The maintenance staff is usually someone that's initially hired at a very young age, and we bring them along, and they usually stay with the town right up until they retire. So they get experience along the
give
way.
them some care and feeding along the way.
Yeah. So, that's, you know, and we got a good staff right now. They work very hard. This time of year is very hard. You have the weather, you have
Spring sports
8,000
plan.
things going on. You got graduations, and they're getting pulled every which way. And, you know, we try to, you know, we sometimes see in social media, you know, people will get a little upset with us, but, you know that we as a commission, as a staff, that we're doing everything I can to make sure that everything goes well for the town.
Okay.
And actually, on that note, what's the hardest part of your role or the board's role that residents probably don't know about or wouldn't expect?
The hardest part, I would say the budgets in the budget and getting, making sure the budget is where we have a quality staff and we're able to meet the needs of the town, especially on, you know, the programming side. You know, I think we have a great program. I think Burlington's rec program is one of the best in the state. We get recognized, Brendan and Kelly have been both recognized nationally as being outstanding directors in the country. And they've gone to schooling. We send them to school every year for anything that's new and above. We're trying to be ahead of the curve. You know, when we hired Emma for our inclusion programs, we were like, I think, the third in the state to hire someone like that. And, you know, those are big steps. We want to be ahead of the curve. And like I said, that's probably one of the biggest things. We want to be the best. We don't want to be behind. So, you know, I personally think we do a great job in preparing for that.
what would you tell someone considering running for a position on your board as to what the job actually involves day to day, or week to week, or month to month,
As a board member.
as a board member?
As a board, so being a recreation commissioner, I would say it's probably not as demanding as the other boards, just because our tough time is we just went through it, through town meeting, all the budget process, all the stuff that we go through. And then the summer times, it's not as crazy, but it's probably our busiest time as a recreation right now until the end of the summer, between summer programs, the maintenance and all that stuff. But as far as a board, we've already done our budgetary process, but we're still on top of it. Like if anything's, like tonight we have the meeting about the fields, and so there's always, as a commission, talks amongst ourselves and the other commissioners that are on the school committee and planning board. We're always communicating with each other throughout the year, and I love it. I mean, I had no expectation when I got on the board. I didn't really know. I've always been involved in sports. I grew up in this town. I've coached every sport there is in this town. I've been on every field in this town, every baseball field in this town. So I've seen it as the town from a 5-year-old all the way up. I taught my last lacrosse game probably 7 years ago. So I've been pretty involved in the community, and that's sort of how I got involved into recreation. And it's great to see the kids, enjoy the fields.
Yeah. No, for sure. You talked a lot about, just kind of a side question, you talked a lot about, you guys prepare a lot ahead of time, and I've experienced as well as heard from other boards, committees, sometimes that planning ahead is difficult. What do you think has enabled you all to be a year plus ahead when you have some of these major projects or major initiatives that you're trying to get ahead of? Like, what is that factor? Is it somebody on the board? Is it a process y'all implemented?
It's usually it's not usually during a meeting. It's usually after a meeting or going up to Brendan's office and sitting down. It's usually the chairperson at the time.
Okay.
Takes a lead role in that, and the chairperson at the time, a vice chair, will sit down with Brendan and Kelly pretty routinely. Communication's pretty open and fast, and Brendan's always communicating with us what's going on, whether good or bad, and then come up with a plan of how to attack something, even if it's in between meetings or something like that. So I personally have a good rapport with Brendan and the staff, so it works out well for me.
Great. And is there another board, department, or official that your board absolutely cannot function well without?
Well, I think the school committee, we have to, everything we do, so all the fields, schools have first priority. So Brandon and our staff have to work directly with the schools on the fields, because obviously the high school sports take priority. And then, between the tracks and all the events that go on in the community, especially sports-wise, that's down at Brush Field, we're putting another field in that's going to help a lot. We think because having another field like that is able to have a lot more kids, because a lot of times we can't open up the fields because of the weather, but those fields in every baseball, lacrosse, and soccer, they all want the fields. And when you have rain or whatever, but you can play on those fields pretty much anytime.
Yeah.
And everyone wants, like us growing up, we didn't have that. I mean, you just, you were
It feels
playing on
like,
dirt,
it
basically.
feels like we have a lot of fields, but yet it also feels like we need more fields. It's like a constant.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
you know, like I said, when spring comes and the fall comes, it's, the fields are demanding.
Yes,
I mean-
yes, I've been at all of them this.
And you have time
Every single
constraints,
one.
right? You don't want a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old out at 8:30 at night.
Yeah.
When they get to school the next morning.
Yeah.
We try to be very mindful of the kids on their time constraints. They get homework, they get other activities that they got to
Yeah.
do. So that's another, so the high school, they try to get their games in at least before 6 o'clock. You know, they get out of school, hopefully the games start on time, and then you can get the other programs that we have in town on the fields by 6:30, because they have so many different age levels, you know what I mean? So it's probably 2 years on one level, then another 2 years the next level. So you got probably 10 years of kids out there trying to get on all these fields, and everybody wants them.
Yeah. Okay, and then one of my last questions is, are there decisions your board makes that another body then has to implement or live with? So basically, like, how, I mean, I think obviously, like, schools, but when y'all make decisions, are there other committees, boards, groups, whatever, businesses, where your decisions, then it relies on them to implement? Or to have to own or manage?
I would just say it would be the Board of Selectmen and School Committee.
Okay.
Those two boards, for sure. Board of Selectmen, because the Board of Selectmen run the town common, so they're in charge of the common, and we have a ton of events on the common, so anything we do, that we do on the common, so when we did the sidewalks, and then we're doing the gazebo, that's sort of coming out of our funding, but the Board of Selectmen have to approve of all that
Yeah,
stuff. And then, you know, like we had the prom about a month ago, and we had the sidewalks going on, and everyone thought, but it worked out.
It did.
We were ahead of the game. We told Brennan, hey, we got to make sure that the prom. So
Yeah.
people know, you know, we're well aware that you know, those are big events for the kids in our community.
Yeah.
We understand that, and the parents, it's big for them also. And that every time we make a decision, we're always thinking about the kids and what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, we're definitely thinking about that.
Yeah.
I have a question about the relationship of the, I don't know if this is a board question, but the relationship with the town DPW and the rec department. Because,
Yeah.
I mean,
They work hand in hand on projects, for sure.
okay. So that's another department that you're,
Our superintendent of maintenance just retired, so we're in the process of interviewing for a new superintendent of maintenance. And so, but we work hand in hand with DPW on numerous jobs. Trees are a big one, taking down trees in the community, in the parks. So sometimes, you know, or the schools. So I think the schools just asked for funding on trees
Yeah.
this year also in town meeting.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but, so those type of things, we work with the other board, the other DPWs. Yeah. Water, you know, water in the parks, you know, water's always a big issue, so we're very, we know that we can only water at certain times and stuff like that, so we work with the water department also.
right. Any other questions? I want to be, I know you need to get to another meeting, so I want to be respectful of that. Any other questions from the committee? No? Great. This is really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me.
No, it was our pleasure.
And as a mom of 3 young kids, thank you to commission and board for all that you guys do.
For sure.
They are consistently entertained.
That's good, that's good. That's what we want to hear. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Great. Okay, I'll go to a couple of updates. The town survey, We have 1,153 responses, which is 11% of the households that responded. So that is really excellent, and a big shout out to Laura and others for their help on promoting this. It's good. Now we're kind of pat ourselves on the back on that one, and time to move on to the community meetings that we're going to be having. So more about
The survey team did note that every time there was a Facebook post made, there was a surge in
participation.
Yeah, in participation.
So that's a note to self for other efforts that we have. That is a pretty good strategy.
Betsy, did you know how many paper copies were received? I'm just curious.
Maybe 50.
Okay.
Maybe 50. Not as many as I had feared. And thanks to Matt and Eileen for inputting them. So it didn't work out with the high school. We never got a volunteer for that, unfortunately. Okay, and then, so that's on the town survey. And I understand that we're going to get an initial very high-level report, which is just going to be like percentages, not analysis of it, on the 22nd of June, which I will share with the committee. And then on July 3rd, I believe, we'll get the full-blown report on the survey. So we'll be able to actually have that information to help inform some of the stuff we're doing as of the 22nd of June. In terms of communications, that group has been meeting on Mondays to go through. We've now shifted from survey to communications on the community input session that we're going to be having. Laura's got some flyers that she's going to hand out to everybody, so can take them, post them, share them, however you want. And she'll be passing those out. Actually, Laura, why don't you just send them around?
I was going to say, I can do some now.
Yeah. And then in the meantime, we've been scheduling. I'll go into that later.
Thank you.
So the next part of the agenda, and I can't really see who's online. I saw Dr. Weiner, I thought, there for a moment. Is there anybody else online?
Manka also. is
Who?
The other, Manka.
Oh, Ted Manka, okay.
Ted Manka.
So let's make note.
Yeah, I think it's like a listening.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. I just want to make note for our minutes as to who's been on. All right, so now let's go to our continued discussion. We had the Recreation Department. The constable unfortunately could not make it, but I asked Patrick if he could please explain to us the constable role, because I think there was some misunderstanding, and I just think we need to make sure we understand what it is. And then we can decide whether we want to revisit, whether we want to vote on whether that is an elected or appointed position. So Patrick, I'm putting him kind of on the spot doing this because I just talked to him before the meeting, so we appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I did talk to one of the constables today, but they were planning on being here or joining remotely, but had a family thing come up. So constables have sort of been around since colonial times. They are, and their role has evolved significantly in that time. So one of the main things that constables perform is the service or process of legal documents, summons. So a lot of times we think of what constables perform as what process servers perform. So a constable is a process server, but a process server is not necessarily a constable. Constables have different sort of statutory abilities to perform other things like issuing town meeting warrants, things like that. So there are a variety of, there are some elected, there are some appointed. When you're a constable, you can only perform constable duties in the community that you're appointed or elected. So you can be appointed by the mayor, appointed by the select board, or you can be elected by the town. You know, I can't speak for the merits of what is better, but I think that, God bless you. The work that constables do is obviously evolved, and most of it is the process of legal documents. When you have a constable that is elected, they're just simply, they run, they qualify for office, and they run, and they're elected. And then they're able to execute the duties of what a constable can do in accordance with Mass General Law. When you have appointed constables, the town administrator, select board, mayor has to receive that application from them, understand that they have experience, understand that they have good sort of moral standing. So there's a sort of a review process that is required by law to understand the qualifications of that constable. For, you know, Boston obviously is a different picture given the businesses they have there. But to be a constable in Boston, there's, my guess is dozens of them. You submit an application, you provide the documentation, and then you are appointed a constable, and then you now have legal authority to perform those constable duties within the city. You know, one of the benefits, I suppose, I use the term benefits lightly, but one of the benefits maybe for appointed is if you can't have, if there's, this is not really a sort of an industry that you see a lot of activity in. So if you don't have somebody that runs for elected office and you want to appoint them, they don't necessarily have to live in the community that they're appointed. So if you're a constable, and I'll say that a different way, it kind of took me a while to get there. You know, to be an elected constable in Burlington, you're an elected official, you have to reside here. To be an appointed constable, you don't necessarily need to be residing in that community. So that may be one benefit if there's nobody that is running for that seat and you need to fill it. Because, you know, there are instances where we actually require constables to do certain things, such as the issuance and posting of town meeting warrants. You know, that's a pretty minor element, and it's kind of it's a colonial era law that they actually take these and post them in, you know, specified public places, post office, things like that. That work has to be done by a constable. That is a unique thing that probably goes back to the 1600s when town meeting started here. So that's the interactions we see with constables from the municipal level. As I said, the real difference is in the elected service, you just have to be a registered voter and qualify for office that way. The appointed process is you must have certain standards to qualify for the office and submit that application to the appointing authority while you're seeking the appointment, and the fitness for duty, moral character, and receive actual like endorsements from members of the community, including an attorney.
Oh.
So that's the difference between elected and appointed, sort of from a broad brush perspective, since Betsy asked me a couple hours ago.
I know.
I have a couple of questions. When you say moral standing, how is that, do you know, it sounds like you didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare this, but do you know how that's judged?
The moral character of the applicant signed by at least 5 reputable citizens
Okay.
of the
So
appointing
colonial era.
municipality, one of whom must be an attorney. So it's just, it's sort of like almost qualifying for a notary, you know, having, you know, people sign to
Okay.
state that you're.
I trust this person.
Right.
Second question, what happens if a town or a municipality doesn't have, say somebody doesn't run, somebody doesn't apply? What if we didn't have constables? What would happen?
So
Specifically to the warrant, because I know like, process serving can happen from elsewhere, but the warrant and other legal documents like that.
So a lot of times that, and I only know a limited amount of this based on having to do some research about sort of these what-if questions for town meetings and other communities, that a lot of times some of those things may be able to be performed by the town clerk or a justice of the peace. Again, these are, things that date back several hundred years, and as far as that goes. I've worked in a community with an appointed constable, and that constable just runs a sort of process-serving business, and they weren't a resident of the town, but they were, the only person that really was interested in that.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did in that instance, where him and his business partner were appointed constables, every year.
A quick Google search says, for posting town meeting warrants, town clerks will use local police officers or town employees to physically post required notices or notify the public if there is not a.
Okay.
This is the local police department, and the sheriff's office can absorb their duties.
Got it.
Are we required to have a constable as a town? In 2026?
Is it in MGL?
I would say yes.
It is.
Yeah. There's a few different laws that deal with it. Chapter 41, Section 1, Chapter 41, Section 91A, and Chapter 41, Section 91B. 91A and 91B relate to the appointed constable. 41, Section 1 relate to elected constables.
But from what I read, it says a town may. It doesn't say a town must.
Okay.
So we're required to have one, so where does the fact that we have two come in? Is that based on like?
Well, you said
size?
may, not?
May,
not-
right.
It's not
Up to town.
required, it's a may?
Right. That's how the law is written that I read.
And to your question, Mr. Nara, that may just be how the bylaws are written to elect X number of constables, whatever it might say in the special act.
Pat, can you remind us on the benchmark stuff with the constable? I have it someplace, I don't think I brought it. I have it here. I don't have it. We can keep talking.
Give me a second.
Yeah, let's keep with the questions. Go ahead, Eileen.
So what other qualifications other than moral authority? And then my second question is.
Can you
get a-
talk into the microphone?
What other qualifications does this position need other than moral authority? And my second question is, do they get a stipend from the town?
So the elected, I have to answer that in two parts, I guess. Elected, you just have to be 18 and registered voter. The appointed, what you could do, it could depend on the community. The community could decide, just because somebody has 5 signatures and just because somebody has experience as a constable doesn't require a community to appoint them if they are an appointed position in that community. You can evaluate, like any other attribute that you might have. This person, for example, the city of Boston, has to have X number of years' experience as a constable. Some communities may ask you to be licensed and have certain other licenses in order to carry out those duties. And then the law simply says any reasonably requested information regarding the applicant's fitness for office, the moral character of the applicant, and then in some cases, you can ask the police to review reputation, so background searches, those types of things, criminal history searches. Really, those become anything that we would do for any employee.
Okay. And then the stipend?
No, so no stipend. As constables, they can charge for their services, so we pay for services for constables, and if you were to hire a constable to serve a document, they can charge for those services.
And do they have to provide any insurance?
They have to be bonded.
They do, okay.
Would there be a price difference between an elected constable and hiring a service that you're going to pay to perform the service if there wasn't a constable?
So what I can't speak to is whether there'd be a price difference between a private company. I don't know. I can't answer that question. I'd rather, yeah.
Can I give a law update? I was just reading section 1 of chapter 41. Every town at its annual meeting shall, in every year, ... I'm not going to read the rest of that, choose by ballot from its registered voters the following town officers for the following terms of office, one or more constables. So it looks, Steve, like it says shall, but then it says unless the town by vote provides that they shall be appointed.
There was another law that said, in the appointed section, it says you may appoint.
Yeah, yeah, that might be
Versus elect.
versus elect,
Yeah.
right, yeah, so.
Okay, so I think we're going to operate under the assumption that
Have to have at least
we're going to
one.
have a constable. The question
Yeah.
is it elected or appointed? You know, Jack?
Question, if the mayor or select board appoints, are they able to expand the authority beyond, or the duties or authority of the constable beyond what Chapter 41 says?
No, so, well, it's interesting. So I can send this around too. This is an interesting update from, this update that I found today relates to some changes that occurred in municipal policing in the last several years with the establishment of the Post Commission, which is the police oversight. So a constable cannot perform other law enforcement duties unless they are also a certified law enforcement officer. So there is some guidance related to that. And so there is some opportunities to allow constables to do things that are more than a traditional constable if they are a post-certified police officer, but not a police officer, but they have very limited sort of policing powers.
You mean a retired police officer? Is that what you mean?
Could be, yeah, or somebody who does this on the side.
Okay, I think we now have had Constable 101. Thank you, Patrick, I really appreciate it. I guess the question is, do we want to reopen the discussion about whether this should be appointed or elected? I think at our last meeting, we thought it should be elected. Yes, elected, to leave everything as it is. If it's not broke, don't fix it, kind of thing.
Would you like me to tell you the benchmarks?
Huh?
Would you like me to?
Oh, yes, the benchmarks, yes, please.
So for the communities, we were able to find them. Burlington has 2 elected. Dedham is appointed. Milford, 5 elected. Milton, 4 elected. And Reading has 4 appointed. So it's a mix.
Yep, mix and mix, okay.
At this point, both Dennis Somerset and Mr. Pepicelli have been doing it for more than a decade.
Yeah, well, we can't look at incumbents. That's not really, we can't look at the people, we have to look at the role. So, we've been fortunate, I guess we have people who've been doing it for a long time. The question is, should this role be elected or appointed? What makes the most sense for the town?
And what problem are we trying to solve?
And what problem are we trying to solve?
And I think we decided last time that it didn't.
It's not
wasn't
broken,
necessary.
right,
Right,
it's
it's
not
not
broken,
broken, there's no problem, so.
that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying we should change it, I'm just saying, do we want to change it? It doesn't look like there's really,
I think my only hesitation is there's pretty much, if only one person runs for the role, there's zero vetting process for somebody who is serving legal documents.
Same thing for town clerk, though.
So what is the means or ability if something goes sideways with a constable? How does it work for possible removal?
Pat, how do you remove an elected official?
If they're elected, we haven't
We haven't gotten there yet.
gotten there yet, but we'll be talking about whether you're interested in a recall for this.
That would be a recall situation. All right, I guess I'll maybe make a motion that we leave it as it is and see if anybody, I think that's the motion. Let's leave it as it is. Second? Okay. Let me, my handy list. Okay. Bill?
Yes.
Okay. Matt?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Russ?
Yes.
Karthik?
Yes.
Eileen?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Betsy, yes. Okay.
If I may, at our last meeting, you also had approved language arranging the terms so that they expire different years before they were expiring on the same year. You may not need to revisit that. I just wanted to point out that.
Yeah, no, I think we're still good with that. Okay. Okay, thank you, great. I'd like to introduce Patrick Lawler. No. Patrick's going to talk to us about, now we're moving right into the next section of the charter. And as a kickoff to that, Pat thought it would be the best thing to get somebody in here who actually knows the job. So I sent out the questions that we had provided to Patrick, and we can run through those. And Pat, I'm going to let you kind of moderate that just to make sure that you get your questions answered, because she needs to take this and put it into draft form, so.
So, Patrick, I know you have a slide prepared, so probably the best first step is for you to kind of walk us through the fiscal year and the process, and then I can follow up with some specific questions I have.
What's the count?
Great, thank you. So I sent this slide to you all just before the meeting started, so you can, if you need to follow along on your computer or see it another time. But try to get rid of this, oops, this little box here.
Oh, it's
Okay.
possible to see this.
So I know one of the questions was to talk about the budget process, and I think that there was a question about inputs along the way from different boards and committees, inputs from the public. So I put together a timeline that is not the most visually appealing, but it is, the idea is to indicate the different points of the budget process. So it's a good time to talk about this because this is actually twice a year. It's kind of a unique opportunity. It's my favorite time where we are in 3 fiscal years at once. We are in fiscal year 2026 right now. We are planning, we are working on the start of FY27, and we are in the process right now, believe it or not, on the FY28 budget development. So we are working within 3 fiscal years in the budget office, so that can be quite confusing at times, but I think it's an important part of the sort of constant evolution of the budget process and the constant work that goes into the budget. So where we are now, starting from the box all the way to the left, and you might not be able to see the legend up at the top, but the peach-colored boxes are staff or administration inputs. The green boxes are governance inputs, so boards, committees, town meeting. And then the sort of blue call-out boxes are indicating significant activity from the prior fiscal year that is occurring at that moment as well. So right now in June and August, June through August, we are preparing the salary projections. So, you know, the budget director right now is working on the salaries, not for next fiscal year, but the fiscal year after that, so we can begin to understand our budget assumptions for the next fiscal year. We'll do that throughout the summer. We'll also this summer make other plans. What does our long-range financial plan look like? what budget adjustments might we need to meet in order to be compliant with our 5-year plan. That may mean efficiencies, that may mean reduction in staff, that may mean creativity in how we are delivering services. This is really the time of year that we start to plan those things from an administrative level and then begin those conversations with department heads and engage them on that. At the same time, we're going to be closing out the prior fiscal year, which is also a pretty significant activity to close the year and really move to the next fiscal year. In September or prior to town meeting, we'll certify free cash. So we'll certify our fund balance from the prior fiscal year. That's generally the expenses that were under our budget and the revenue that were over budget. Gives us our free cash or our fund balance number, which is an important aspect in the financial closing process. In October, we will issue the FY28 to FY32 capital plan instructions. So that's our 5-year capital plan. A memo will go out from me to all department heads describing the requests, attaching the request form, setting the deadline for when capital requests for the next fiscal year need to be in. And so ideally what that will look like is the request from the prior year will roll up a year, and then we will have the new request for the 5th year. That's not always the case. Sometimes we have one-off projects that may occur, so we see those at that time. But generally, good planning will have very little surprises at that point. And right after October, we certify new growth from the prior fiscal year. This is also a very important milestone in the fiscal year closeout. New growth is the taxable value of new construction activities. So whether it's a new building going up on the commercial side or whether it's realizing the value of a bathroom or kitchen addition in a residential home, that taxable value is then added to our levy limit. So that provides a key metric in understanding what our taxable value will look like at the tax classification process. In November, we have my favorite day of the year. Our town and school leadership teams come together and we review, and this was a little bit of a newer process here that we did this year. We reviewed every single request together, and I really thank the department heads for some of the bigger departments like DPW and Recreation and some of the smaller departments. Everybody was there through the entire process, understanding the requests, helping set priorities together. That's a big part of the capital planning process that we started last year that isn't memorialized by authority in the bylaw or isn't memorialized in the bylaw by a process, but the unified capital plan together with the unified long-range financial plan really is what makes it all work and what makes us able to go to town meeting prepared, understanding of our plan that is built on assumptions, that is built on an integrated financing plan. That's also a new element from last year, is that we moved to a metric-based capital plan. So a percentage of the operating budget for town and schools, a percentage of available free cash make up our capital spending on an annual basis. That way we have a clear understanding of what we can fit into our long-range financial plan. We also have a clear understanding that moving forward on a year-to-year basis, we are investing an amount that is sustainable, predictable, and we don't have wild swings in requests. So, for example, that is built so that, one department might not try to push a request through that is just not going to fit in our plan financially, which would then cause disruption in our financial planning and ultimately cause disruption to taxpayers if we are not able to manage that in a unified way. In November, so our first, there are significant governance inputs to this point, but one of the milestones here is we get together with the Select Board, the Ways and Means Committee, the School Committee, and administration from the town and the school side, and Town administration will present our budget guideline recommendations, and what that really looks like is what the town and school operating budgets should be based on our long-range financial plan. We presented a 5-year plan this year, which I think is intended to align with all of our planning processes, and also set pretty aspirational and really challenging goals to bring those budget increases down.
You said this year you presented a 5-year plan. Has historically there not been a 5-year plan presented?
I'm not sure this is my first year. I think that usually that's been an annual basis. This year, we were pretty intent on saying that, and at the guidelines meeting, it's only that 1 year that the guideline is set, but it's important to us to show this year in the context of other years and how we can walk that down incrementally from where it was at 4.5% in fiscal year '26 to our goal for beginning in FY '28 to be, or FY '29 to be 3.75%. So that is not going to be accomplished in one fiscal year, so we recognize the need to step that down on a multi-year basis. So after the budget guidelines meeting, where we have reached consensus with our key financial governance boards at that, we will issue instructions to department heads and inform them of the budget changes. So that memo usually looks like, outlines what the parameters are for the guidelines, the budget guidelines. We oftentimes have messages about requesting submissions of a level service budget. What that may look like may take different shapes in the end. But at that point, we set the instructions for what we are looking for from departments for the budget, operating budget. At the same time, in the blue call-out box, we are setting the tax rate from what was approved back in May at the town meeting that appropriated that next fiscal year's budget. So the select board sets the tax rate. That's when we really know what the tax impact is of the budget that was voted in May. Everything before that is our best estimate, but there are a whole lot of inputs and outputs, as you can see, before we know the full picture there.
So how long do department heads get before, is it like 30 days or less?
So it's more than that, because we are talking to them in what's valuable about the long-range financial plan is that the parameters.
In the general sense.
The parameters are pretty well known. So we're talking in October, we're talking in November.
Okay.
Last year, we issued, and we may do it this year, a joint memo in November that outlined the capital and budget instructions in one. I'm trying to move the time frame even closer this year. So, those discussions are ongoing. So we'll send that in late October, early November, the operating budget instructions, and that'll usually be due the last day in December. And then right after the first of the year, we'll meet with department heads to review their budgets. And at that point, it's the town administration, the budget team, really asking the department heads to explain different areas. We're getting a deep sense of some of the expenses at this point. We know the salaries, essentially. At this point, we're understanding what are those operating expense challenges that are coming up as they see and know them the best. So then that's about a month process of us working with them. So that sort of initial submission, really, to your point, to your question, Jess, they're really only submitting expense requests, not salary requests. We do that for them. So they're submitting those expense requests, and then we finalize everything at the end of January. The bylaws state that the Capital Budget Committee receive the capital plan by February 1st. So we provide the Capital Budget Committee with a very large book that includes, this year, for the first time, we included all 5 years' worth of requests and 1 year's worth of backup, so quotes, specifications on all the submissions. And then in February, we are here in this room providing a budget overview. Much of this information that we provide there has been discussed previously, but we sort of fortify our budget overview and our assumptions to Ways and Means, and we deliver them. Many of them receive it electronically, but many of them also receive these very large binders of all the detail that we have produced from the whole prior year. So they receive those binders with all that information.
Is that a requirement?
It is a requirement of the bylaw that the town administrator gather a uniform budget document for Ways and Means. So the form isn't required. There's just sort of a preference on how folks receive information, which is about half and half. Yeah, so to that point, from about February to April, we're in production mode as far as document production. We're working on that budget book. We're working on the same time the town meeting backup. This year, 785 pages went out to town meeting members. We were fortunate that many of them picked them up in person this year, the first year that we've allowed them to pick up in person so that we can save on postage. And it is a significant amount of information. I think that it's good. The expectation levels have grown for what people see for backup, which is good, but it obviously requires a significant printing. We are already establishing some efficiencies there. I don't think it's going to save us in printing costs, but allowing town meeting members, I was showing Betsy a preview a couple weeks ago of what it'll look like on our website, article by article, and all the information for town meeting members. So we're excited about that. In April, town meeting members have provided all those budget materials, as I mentioned. Oh, I missed a pretty key one here, the bottom row, all the way to the left. So this February through April, we are having our select board, Ways and Means, and capital budget meetings, budget hearings. So that's a pretty significant output of the administration at that point. We are at every Ways and Means meeting, we're at every select board meeting presenting those budgets. The department heads are also here presenting their budgets, talking about where they are under guidelines, why they might be slightly over guidelines for some reason. You know, our goal for the town side and the school side as well is to come in the town side under the budget guidelines. That may mean that some departments individually may be over, but there are also some town budgets that are under, so in the aggregate, under the guidelines. And even those departments that might be over, we heavily scrutinize those, and we expect scrutiny and questions from Select Board and Ways and Means on how to defend those. And sometimes they are contractual obligations, a new employee is stepping into a step increase, or, for example, the assessor's office this year, we had a new software that we had to implement before an old one expiring, so that kicked the expenses up. But we know every reason why it's over in each of those budgets, whether they are under the select board authority or not. Continuing in April, we have warrant article review before the select board and the Ways and Means Committee. This year they did it separately from when departments are here for their budget, and then they come back about a month later and they go over their capital requests and any other financial warrant articles, whether they're debt service or free cash articles or operating budget capital. They go through those at Ways and Means and the Select Board. And then at the same time, there are budget meetings happening for the Recreation Commission. There's a budget component from the Planning Board. There's other boards are talking about their department budget at the same time, Board of Health. So that kind of gives you a sense of what the budget process looks like It's not a 4-month, 5-month process. It is a ongoing process. And as far as, I think one of the other questions was public input. These are all, everything in green, for the most part, is a public meeting, so every budget, at least on the budgets under the Select Board Authority, is reviewed in at least 2 public meetings, oftentimes more, so there's opportunity there. We love to hear from residents outside that process. I've talked to a couple of residents about the budget process recently, just walking them through how we get to town meeting. So we kind of have an open door policy when it comes to talking budget, which we are already thinking about ways to engage folks a little bit more in that process. So I don't know if there's other questions, Pat, there that I'm...
There are. I have a few, but
Please.
I don't know if anybody else has a question. I'll let the committee ask questions first that they may have about this process or something they didn't
Go ahead and jump in.
Pardon?
Go ahead and jump in.
Dive in? Okay, great. So I have some specific questions and some more general questions. Can you tell me, do you understand the school committee process and how they form their budget and how they merge with yours in order to go to town meeting?
Sure. So there are both connected and separate processes statutorily that we have with the school department budget and the town budget. So there is a lot of connection and partnership along the way with the school department. So when we talk about the capital planning, last year was the first year of sort of this advanced schedule, or I should say accelerated schedule for the capital plan, which is not really consistent with the school committee's calendar of activities. So we recognize, and I recognize, that that may take a couple of years to align the schedules. So the school committee's budget that came before Ways and Means and Capital was a little bit later than where the town's was, but this was the first year of that process. So the school department, we work closely with them in the Capital Budget Summit, so they're here with us going through. They may, the goal will be for them to have their requests at that point. Again, we were advancing the schedule on them 4 or 5 months with pretty little notice, so we expect that'll be different for next year. They're here with us at the budget guidelines meeting, so and they're also with us on a number of informal conversations too. There are expense areas in the school budget that we often speak with them to learn more about some of the accommodated accounts, where they might be coming in that year, what special ed costs may be based on actual student enrollment. So as we work with them on that informs our budget process as well, because then we can say, all right, if that's going to be lower than expected, we can then make sure that we are investing in another area, or making sure that we have the funds available for health insurance, for example. This year we were able to increase our health insurance budget which we needed to do anyways, but we were able to do it with limited impact because there was lower than anticipated special ed and transportation costs. So they're connected with us much of the way. They have a slightly different process as far as their budget hearing process. So they're meeting with, the school committee is meeting with their department heads and their principals, similar to how we would operate in the select board. As far as the intimate details of their schedule and how they line up with ultimately recommending the final budget, I can't speak to. Just don't have the experience here. But it is slightly after ours in February. So I know this year there was significant work between Ways and Means and the school committee throughout March, throughout April, throughout May, as they refine their budget request to be at the guidelines of 4.25%. So that's another aspect of it. This 5-year plan is nice, but it does present challenges to make sure that everybody's meeting it. So when that means programmatic changes, that requires some time to evaluate. When that means potential service level disruptions that may require further time to evaluate. I think those are healthy and good conversations, whether it's the town or the school, but it does require that. So they're patched in with us, but they're also a little bit separate as far as their timeline and requirements.
Patrick, I have a quick question. The town administration sets the target budget increase for everybody?
So, not exactly. I mean, that is not an authority granted
In practice?
through our bylaws.
Yeah.
In the practice, I think in different years, and it's been different outputs. In some cases, it may be Ways and Means saying something. The approach that we are hoping to take and the approach that we're taking is, so long-range financial planning, I'll say, is difficult when there's not sort of a central planning function, right? So when there is not the embedded, responsibility for the entire town budget, which the bylaws don't grant that right now. We sort of operate a little bit like that, or to the extent that we can. This year, the administration with Ways and Means and Select Board presented the options for guidelines and our recommendation, and that's ultimately what was adopted sort of by that subgroup. So I think that myself and the town administrator feel as stewards of the taxpayer, our sort of responsibility is to develop those, and that's not inconsistent with what's been done here. It's our responsibility to present those long-range plans and present what we feel is going to be sort of tolerated based on the budget. So the answer is yes, to a good extent that we set those guidelines, and we are a key stakeholder in setting those guidelines. But, they really are guidelines, and there were departments that came in above those guidelines this year.
And you're getting input from them as you're developing the guidelines as well?
Yes, and so, one of the challenges, we're constantly hearing from them about, okay, what retirements do you have up that is going to allow us to have people maybe lower on the pay scale? What program additions are you looking at this year? You heard about the recreation, therapeutic recreation. They added a position there this year by changing some other things. So our goal is to make sure that the town department increase is at guideline or below. This year it was below. That can conceivably require us to have, if that's our goal, that could require us to have lower budgets in some areas if there are other department budgets that are coming in above guideline. So that's when there's a little bit of tension in where we, in sort of the limited responsibility isn't the right word, but authority on who is deciding what the budget increase is.
This is to anybody who knows the answer. Does the Ways and Means Committee, who it seems like is the actual central point that's getting all this information, do they have the authority to alter lines of a budget to make it balanced or do whatever they need to do to? Obviously, that's a pretty extreme case, but, obviously they try to work with people, but.
Or who has that authority?
Right. Who, if anybody, given that, it sounds like, if I'm summarizing correctly, and I could be wrong, I'm just paraphrasing here, the town administration tries to organize it and sort of shepherd it as best as it can. It gets input from everybody. It hands off at some point and says, okay, other departments or the schools, go do your thing. Here's what we suggest as, the range of how we're going to operate. At some point, all of that information is coming back, I think ultimately to the Finance Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, really. And then there's obviously interactions and talking. There's all the tradition of going through this or the intention of going through this, but who actually makes the final call?
Patrick, be able to comment? I was on Ways and Means. So.
Okay, can you talk into the microphone, Bill?
Yeah. The job of Ways and Means is to make a recommendation to town meeting. Town meeting makes the final call.
Yeah.
Don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
Ways and Means can recommend a budget different from what the administration has presented. That is also their responsibility to review it. If they think it's in line, or if it's not in line, or they don't agree with the backup and rationale for adding a new position, they can cut the funding for that and make that as their recommendation to town meeting.
Got it. That makes sense.
Bill, would you comment on the Ways and Means Subcommittee meeting with the department heads and what negotiations go there?
Yeah, Ways and Means is broken up into a number of subcommittees with responsibilities for meeting with each department. So not only do the departments get to come here for the complete entire Ways and Means Committee, they also have already met with a subcommittee of at least 2 people that go through it and discuss it in great detail to have a deeper, more detailed insight into their budget, so that then when we come to the presentation of that department to the whole committee, the subcommittee takes the lead. They will talk about that budget and make their recommendation to the entire committee.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. That's an important part of the governance process, too. That's an extensive process, the subcommittee meetings of Ways and Means, and that's a very valuable part of the process because it allows us to go in very, very deep detail with that subcommittee. We spent, I think, 3.5 hours on health insurance right in this room with the subcommittee, and that made them much more informed of sort of the approach we're taking and their confidence in that approach. So that is a big, that's a great aspect of the process here, from just my opinion.
Jack?
In the timeline, which is no longer up there, at some point, you do transfers line to line within a department or out of the department to another department. Some goes back to general funds, some goes elsewhere. Could you explain that process?
Sure. Yes. We refer to those as end-of-year transfers. So Mass General Law allows 2 options for transfers. Town meeting can transfer from one appropriation to another. But what is most commonly used in cities and towns, and what we do here, is end-of-year transfers from one budget to another. It can happen within the last 2 months of the fiscal year or 15 days into the next fiscal year. And so if we have a department that has expended more than their appropriation, typically that happens for unforeseen circumstances or extraordinary situations, or there may be an injury in a department, and as a result, the overtime budget needs to be used to fill that. And then together with that, there may be a budget that is underspent. So we are allowed, with the approval of the Select Board and the Finance Committee, or Ways and Means, to transfer from one budget to another. So for example, if we need to transfer if there's a deficit in the fire department budget and there is a surplus in the DPW budget, we can transfer those funds from DPW to Recreation to fulfill the deficit in that appropriation. And we can do similar at those, if there's any revolving fund limits spending limits that need to be increased, they can be approved by the Select Board and the Finance Committee, Ways and Means.
And when do you determine how much is available for the warrant articles that is outside the budgets, including the accommodated accounts?
Sure. The accommodated accounts are decided at the guidelines meeting as well. So we set the percentage increase for accommodated, as well as the percentage increase for operating budget recommendation at the guidelines meeting. That's often one that has some variability based on the further we get in the fiscal year, the more information we have. For example, this year we had a target of 8% for accommodated. We, at one point, were at 7.3%, and then we found additional enrollees at one of the technical schools that pushed us over 8%, and there was changes in the law related to Shawshene, related to technical school lotteries, so we ended up, I think, at 8.01%, so I call that the target was met, but, you know, that has some variability too. As far as the warrant articles related to that are either free cash or from raise and appropriate, those we, for the most part, expect are fitting in the capital plan. So those have already met the sort of capital plan target, you know, with the exception of a couple every year that are sort of standalone articles that we raise from free cash. We're still under the target. So those are, those meet the assumptions in both the capital plan and the long-range plan.
And if there's not enough to meet what everyone wants, how do you determine how much goes town side, how much goes school side?
Sure. So what has traditionally been here is the free cash capital has been 50-50 town and schools. This year, the schools came in a little bit under, and so what we didn't do is say, okay, let's go back and add a town project. We just said, okay, this year we're building capacity for future years. So what does happen, though, is amongst the town departments, that's a big reason why I'm a big believer in sort of the unified approach of doing it together, is that there is a lot of, I wouldn't say negotiating, but a lot of back and forth between us and departments. You know, DPW this year, for example, wanted additional funds for stream cleaning, and we had to walk them down based on other needs in other departments. And that's not done arbitrarily. We have those conversations and find out how they can fit that in. There's some elements in the recreation budget. We asked, you know, can you do this next year, or do design this year and construction in next year? So there's the library did the same thing. We needed additional funds. We asked the library to reduce their request. So there's a very large amount of back and forth between the administration and department heads to make it work.
Patrick, on the budget guidelines and the big meeting with schools and administration, I know Ways and Means participates in that. Is there any thought about when you're having this big meeting to look at and set your capital items, budgets, or you know, ranking or whatever, to include the capital budget committee at least as a observer?
Yeah, I think so. So last year, in addition to this whole process, we created the Town Administrator's Capital Plan Working Group, which included Ways and Means, schools, recreation, DPW, so key department heads and capital budget committee. And Mark Woods was on that, and he's the chair of capital budget. And that was the group that spent the summer and fall developing this plan and sort of getting buy-in on that. And so when we went to capital, they were happy that they had representation there. So I think that we need to continue that connection, not just okay, we met, we developed it, see you later, we'll see you at the hearing. Our preference, I think, is to have that connection all the way through. And I think that there's even opportunities to do that with other boards in a bigger way, as we talk about not just capital, but the operating budget and the long-range operating budget plan, so that we're all connected a little bit more. I think that's one of the things we're going to hear a lot about and talk a lot about in the next year, is sort of connecting those visions a little bit more. We're doing it at the staff level in a pretty aggressive way, and ready to step that up to the board level.
Patrick, where does the, I mean, I get the 5-year thing, but the longer range planning, where does that happen? You know, I'm thinking of schools and stuff like that, where you want police stations and the things that you should be able to predict pretty far out when you're going to need them.
So schools do, they do a 10-year, they might even do a 20-year. Traditionally, there's been a 10-year sort of list of potential projects that's been issued. I think that, well, the best practice for capital planning is 5 years.
Yep.
Certainly, you need to be thinking beyond that when you're thinking of schools, fire stations, police stations. What happens beyond 5 years is the numbers become pretty unpredictable, and you put a number out like what might seem outrageous that you have to put out, like, well, we don't know what it's going to look like, so let's put, $100 million for a new fire station, and people see that, and that sort of sets a whole misunderstanding about what things may or may not cost. So what we do follow is the Association of Town Finance Committees has guidelines and best practices for all of these areas. And so we follow that for we follow their capital planning approach there. But certainly, we see those bigger projects in year 5, right? And we try to account for everything that may be there so that there's a pretty robust planning process. For a school that is in the MSBA process, that is often a 10 to 12 year sort of open and shut process. So, that formal planning may not be happening sort of in the production of a budget book, but those are sort of discussions that we're looking at that, okay, what's next in the next, beyond that 5 years that we have to start thinking about. And the idea being, say a project is 7 years away. In year 5 of our capital plan, we should have feasibility funding for that, so that we at least see 5 years from now, okay, we need to at least commission a feasibility study to understand the needs, what this project may look like. The year after that, there may be design funding, and then the year after that, there may be construction funding. I know there was some debate this year at town meeting that those two, feasibility design or design and construction, should not be, or should be more connected, or one authorization. And I think that from my perspective, from a financial planning perspective, walking them as separate appropriations to each other is a better approach. I think it's a whole lot better to have to walk away from 500,000 than have to be stuck with 200 million. So I think that that's just a point of disagreement from my perspective, but having those feasibility, design, and then construction. So we at least see, okay, 5 year, I see a feasibility study. That means in 2 years after that, so 7 years from now, we're going to see construction requests. So that's where that sort of long-range planning is happening.
Yeah.
Patrick, are we using technology to the best that we can? I mean, I'm just thinking about the budgeting, planning, not just accounting, but elsewhere, administration.
Yes, this is sort of an interesting area where I get like 6 or 7 calls a week from budget vendors, and the latest vendor that wants to make our budget book look like everybody else's budget book. And, so I think the communities that do that, they produce a nice budget book, but you lose connection to it. It becomes very uniform. So as far as technology goes, yes, I mean, we're relying on our sort of enterprise accounting software systems through Munis. We're constantly adding modules to that for budgeting. So, what's nice, it was a big adjustment for me over the last year personally. We use the Google Suite here instead of like the Outlook and Microsoft Suite. And there's huge collaboration features in that we have sort of adopted for the finance department and budget department. That, I shouldn't say adopted because they just existed, but I've acclimated well to them, I guess I should say, as I've adjusted. But so there's a huge amount of collaboration in that way.
On a related note, so you mentioned that in the budget, you did the salaries, that they were programmed in, what have you. So when you do that, do you presume that the head count is going to stay flat, or it's going to decrease because of technology? Maybe we don't need that person anymore. Maybe it's been consolidated or what have you. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, in some instances, we're doing a few different things. We are understanding, first, salaries being about 80% of the budget. By doing that early, we gain this understanding of, okay, how close are we going to be, or how far off are we going to be from the guideline, so that we can then begin to make informed, data-driven decisions about personnel and how we're allocating those resources or how we're adjusting those resources. What also helps us is understanding potential retirements so that we can, make those adjustments or see relief. This year, we kind of had significant retirements in a bunch of departments that allowed us to really keep the level service while reducing the operating budget. So that was a big factor. So next year, that may not be a resource to us, and so there may be hard decisions. And that's the process we're going through now. Rachel and I, the budget director, are working today looking at, pretty down into the details of, okay, this person is likely to get promoted because of their rank, so it's a pretty granular process that we take the time to go through at this point. And that just provides us as much information as we can on where we're going to be, 6 months from now.
Pat, any other questions from you?
I do. I wanted to ask you, and you may not know this answer yet, but I wanted to read, have you been reviewing some of the recommended language that for the town administrator section?
I've not thoroughly, but I've seen some of it, yeah.
And the new language that was recommended says the town administrator shall be responsible for the preparation of the annual operating budget for the town, except for the school department. The town administrator shall coordinate with the finance committee on the preparation and format of the unified budget document. I'm wondering if this language, if you see that as changing your role, or if there are elements of your role that you think can be better coordinated, or to give the town administrator what they need to move forward on the budget.
I think that what that does, that language memorializes our current best approach and best practice. Right now, I think it's more, the language is more of the town administrator sort of collects budgets and prepares them in a uniform. When you're saying preparation, that provides that sort of centralized or unified long-range planning posture so that that can be accomplished. I think that that's a significant improvement to how things ought to be.
It says the same thing, essentially, about the preparation of the annual proposed capital plan. And we've said including the school department. Right now, are you coordinating the capital plan including the school department, or does that go directly to the Ways and Means separately from your?
Right now, it pretty much goes to Ways and Means. We provide and work with them on a target of where we need to be, essentially. But I think as far as the overall approach, that might make sense so that it maintains that sort of continuity on how things go. And I think that
I agree.
I'm not sure that things would change from an allocation perspective. So, we also rely on the sort of subject matter experts to tell us how much they need for certain things. Like when it comes to fire and police, we rely on them as an example that it can be sort of tangential to the school department. We're not experts in, or I'm not an expert in fire apparatus. So when the chief says that he needs, 5 self-contained breathing apparatus, we take his word for it and we study that. So I think that that's not inconsistent with how that works.
So we'd leave it.
And just some just so I understand the process, when in your chart, you were talking about, for example, your leadership teams, your capital summit, where you review all the requests together. How do you, as a practical matter, how do you resolve these differences in the capital plan, the different needs, and to make sure that you're staying under your cap?
Sure, I think that we're talking about them and talking with these department heads consistently, and I think that that makes a big difference when folks understand the meaning and the results that come from that meaningful long-range financial planning. We often see department heads realizing pretty quickly, this is not a limitation, this is a structured way for me to get my capital projects completed and actually have sort of feel validated and trust that their projects are going to be funded. They may not, their sort of list of priorities may change based on how much we're going to allocate towards that department or how much we have available. But what I have seen over time is department heads say, oh, this is actually the pathway for me. This isn't a limitation. This is a pathway for me to get more done and deliver better services ultimately, which is what we want. So that's one of them. And I think that one of the goals that myself and John have had this year is to connect with department heads on a more regular basis. And some of the department heads that might be not under the select board authorities we're spending more and more time with. I think that there's a group of us that get together, myself, economic development, planning, conservation, engineering, all the sort of land use people, because I know the least about that subject, so I want to learn more about that. So it's that group is connecting the dots together on sort of these interdepartmental measures. So we view this as one organization, and we're more that we can be working together, the easier those conversations ultimately are, because everybody's a partner in them.
Thank you very much.
Jack?
Is there any one place or point that's got the responsibility for forecasting or predicting what the revenue will be 2, 3, 4, 5 years out? And do we have any statistics that say what's the accuracy deviation as the further out you go?
Yeah, that's a big input to our long-range planning process. So, I'm picturing it in my head, but it's not helpful to anybody else who doesn't know all the tabs in the spreadsheet. But so what we do is, to answer your question, I think it's a responsibility of the town administrator, assistant town administrator, budget director, to be looking at the assumptions and testing them. And so what we do on a pretty regular basis is look at what our assumptions are for local receipts, for example. Are our assumptions in line with actuals? How close should they be? How close should they not be? There are some areas that are a little bit more volatile. There are some areas that we don't want to be, like investment income. We may have significant investment income as a result of what's happening in the markets that are paying for returns on cash. That can change pretty quickly, or that may be as a result of receiving bond proceeds and not paying them out for 3 months and having a blip there. So there are some areas that we are ultra conservative on because we know by experience seeing how budgets can be burned that way. And then there are other areas we look at where we say, okay, should we be using a 10-year average for this, a 5-year average, or should we be using a more trend-driven assumption there? I will say, and lack of talking this through with really anybody, but I think it's important to engage people in that process more. So I had a meeting with a town meeting member the other day who was just curious about all this stuff, and one of the things that we talked a little bit about was the more people that are buying into that approach and are buying into the revenue assumptions, for example, I think, the better product that we will deliver to town meeting as far as confidence in the budget and understanding of the budget. So I think that we'll be looking for ways to engage people in exactly what you're talking about, Jack. And I'm open to ideas for people that have that, because
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Patrick, thank you so much. This has been
No, thank
really
you.
enlightening. We appreciate your time.
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, so as I understand it, Pat's going to take all of this and put it into something that will go into the charter that then we will review. So, we'll come to that administrative section, we'll actually have some meaty stuff to take a look at. So, and I don't know when, Pat, what are you thinking in terms of timing for doing that, do you think?
Hopefully we'll have something initial to talk about at the next meeting.
Okay. Put that on the agenda. Okay. You wanted to talk about a couple of small things, the conflict of interest provision finalization.
Okay. So, just pull that up. In one of our last couple of meetings, we had a provision in general provisions under elected officers where we discussed the conflict of interest, putting something into the elected boards and officials about financial interests. We talked about the state law already has a pretty sophisticated conflict of interest statute, but you felt let's put part of this right into the charter. The charter can be even more restrictive if you want it to be than the conflict of interest statute. And I'll just read it to you really quickly to refresh your memory. No elected official shall hear, vote upon, or take any action upon any matter which the official has an interest, direct or indirect, personal or professional. For the purpose of this section, interest shall include membership in a firm, partnership, or corporation that has a direct or indirect financial interest in the matter before the official. The conflict of interest provisions are complex, and this may be more restrictive in some ways, but it can't be less restrictive. So all the conflict of interest provisions still apply. What we didn't really detail, and I wanted to understand the sense of the committee on, is whether this provision applies to elected town meeting members. And the reason I ask this is, in general, conflict of interest rules do not apply to town meeting members. And that is because there's a sense that the people who are elected and come before are maybe employees of the town, are coming from businesses in the town, and they may have a lot of interests. But so to include town meeting members in this provision would really be an additional conflict of interest restriction that they do not already have. So I thought you might want to talk a little bit about whether that's your intent or whether we should say except for town meeting members in this provision.
Just one piece of clarification, too. In your memo, it's listed under general provisions, and I want to be sure we're talking about Article 3,
Yeah.
Section 3.1,
Section
general
3.1
provisions.
C.
Because there are other places called
Oh,
general provisions.
yes.
Yeah, okay, got it. Yep,
Article
3.1C.
yep, just
3.1C.
making sure.
Don't we have somewhere in the bylaw or something where town meeting members are supposed to not vote on articles where they might have a conflict of interest? Like I've
I
had,
think at one time it was voluntary. They just simply had to declare that they had interest.
right, I
I
have
think
had,
it's gone all over the place at times.
I have had people, inform me that they weren't going to vote on a department's budget because they have a son who works in the department, or something like that. So there's a brain cell telling me somewhere that we have something like that in our
Yeah, I thought it was,
bylaw,
yeah, I think it's a
town
bylaw.
meeting handbook, or something
Maybe
like that.
that's what,
I can read what's already in the bylaw, and that is, and this is fairly common, that you may not prohibit them from voting, but perhaps you make them disclose
Yeah.
their interest. And what you have, it's Article 2, Section 6, Ethics. A town meeting member is required, prior to addressing town meeting, to disclose his or her financial interest or the financial interest of an immediate family member in connection with any warrant article or budget item that is before town meeting for consideration. And it says, for purposes of this section, immediate family members shall include the town meeting member and his or her spouse and their parents, children, brothers and sister. A financial interest is defined as any money, thing of value, or economic benefit conferred on or received by the town meeting member or their immediate family. And it goes on, it's actually pretty long. In addition, town meeting members are required, prior to addressing town meeting, to disclose whether the member or members of their family are employed by the town, and whether they serve on any board or committee of the town. And it says, provided, however, that any town meeting member who has a financial interest as set forth in this section shall consider a voluntary abstention from voting on the warrant article or budget item in question. Notification of such abstention shall, if possible, be given to the moderator in writing before the session in which the article is considered, but at least before debate on the article. So that's what you already have in place in your bylaws. And that, that part is not carried over into the charter currently, mostly because you can change it easier, you can make, you can decide what needs to be done. It's more of a rule of town meeting than it is forming the structure of town meeting. So that's what's currently in place. And this would prohibit them from voting as well if they have a financial interest, and not just not really requiring them to, state what their interest is and consider abstaining if they have a financial interest.
But if we add except town meeting members to this charter language, that then null and voids the bylaw.
I don't like the idea of doing that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of adding excludes town meeting.
Yeah.
Unless you say, except for town meeting members, except to the extent that, the bylaw may address town meeting members' conflicts.
Yeah, and then what we're doing is, like, part of what we're trying to do is eliminate all of these, like, oh, go look at here to find the information that you want. I think we're trying to have it all in one place. At least that was part of the objective here. And
Can I, go ahead.
okay, I was going to say, and to the extent that some of that is not changing, we don't have to get as verbose as that, but I think we can have the essence of that in there for town meeting. I do think ethics standards are something that you shouldn't want to change all the time. Those are like higher level principles that shouldn't have to change, and I think those do belong in the charter. The detail, maybe there'll be some bylaw stuff on that, but I don't, that's my feeling on it.
I had a question. So you mean to say that if my husband or wife works in the library and the library budget comes up, I either recuse myself or I can't vote? Is that right?
Or you disclose.
Under the bylaw, if under the bylaw,
Yes.
If you have a financial interest, you consider a voluntary abstention, but you have to notify the town moderator.
But you also, in that bylaw, don't you have to acknowledge?
If you're going to speak on the matter,
Yeah.
you need to acknowledge that.
Okay. And then, of course, there's a whole concept of enforcement, but that's not
Right.
what we're here to do.
So
I mean,
that's the
because
current
half
bylaw.
of town meeting would probably,
And under the, although under the language that is in the chart, the original proposed language as an elected official,
yeah.
It's a larger burden because it would now be, you may not vote on a matter with financial interest. So if you're an employee, if you're an employee of the town, can you now, or your spouses, can you now no longer vote on the budget? to a certain extent, the committee needs to decide, because if somebody has to abstain from such a significant item as a budget, it's kind of de facto, excluding town employees or people who serve on boards. Can the people who serve on boards, have?
But wouldn't they only be restricted from voting on their own department and their own board? They wouldn't have to abstain from voting on the entire budget.
Right.
Well,
If it gets bundled
although,
together,
since it's a consent voting process, then they would have to vote on each individual budget individually, so that people who wanted to abstain could abstain, right?
Are you trying to make my job harder?
Absolutely not. I talked myself out of what I was going to say.
Or town meeting longer?
Well, each town meeting does it differently. Some of them talk about the budget as a whole and have one vote up and down. And
The way Burlington's done it for the last several years is that it's a consent budget. The moderator reads off all of the different budget items, and if anybody wants to hold one, they hold that. And then all the held items get discussed separately, but all of the ones that did not get held then get voted on as a whole. And so somebody, if they wanted to abstain from the fire department budget, for example, would have to hold that budget. And then it's another person has to abstain from the planning department budget. They'd have to hold that budget, and then they'd have to separately abstain. It sounds messy. I don't want to...
Right.
I don't want to take out the ethic component, because I do believe that people should be abstaining from things that they have at stake in. But so I don't want to take that out in the interest of maintaining the order that we have created in town meeting. But it does add another layer of complication to, especially the May town meeting. I think the other town meetings, I wouldn't be as worried about.
And that's probably the purpose of this provision, that you notify, the town moderator in advance, probably, so they can pull apart those sections.
Do other towns specifically codify circumstances under which people can't vote? Just example, someone voting on their own budget for a department they're part of?
Yeah.
Would it be possible to codify certain circumstances under which conflict of interest laws apply and ones in which they don't?
Yeah, that was my question. I didn't know what financial interest means exactly.
Let me see how it was defined. It's the provision that in the charter right now says any matter in which the official has an interest, direct or indirect, personal or professional. So that's very broad. And so including a membership in a firm, partnership or corporation that has a direct or indirect financial interest. So the provision that the language you've recommended in the charter is fairly broad and includes personal and financial and professional implications. So what is in the bylaw is much more narrowly contained to financial implications, and it's defined a little more narrowly.
Just to be clear again, the thing we've already talked about, which is, for the charter, is specifically under the section about elected officers and boards. So at the moment, it would not necessarily apply to town meeting members because it is not under the section that we're discussing, although it does refer to elected official is
Right,
a town
and
meeting
I
member
thought it was
and elected
unclear.
official.
That's why I brought it up. I thought it was unclear
Yeah.
whether it might be construed to apply to town meeting members, which is why I brought it up, and I suggested we either exclude them, clarify it one way or another.
All right, so I think I'm hearing there's sort of two aspects of this discussion. One is, how do we clarify this language to either apply to just the section we've talked about, or whether we can clarify that it also extends to town meeting or not? And then secondly, there is existing ethics language around town meeting. How does that alter this or not? And do we include any or all of it in the charter? Does there's a lot of layers to that particular onion.
And
but-
kind of adding on to that, does it make sense that in Article 2, which is where we talk about representative town meeting, that we put the section about conflict of interest there, and so that when you get to this section on elected boards, that is, you know,
You can add a reference back to, like, for
Anyway,
conflict of interest, for
scope.
representative meeting,
go
please
to
refer
section 2.
Article 2.
Article 2, right. And that way, we can have the ethics comments under town meeting. We can phrase it similarly to what we have, but obviously compact it a little bit, and then not pollute the more rigid requirements, which we want to keep for the elected boards, where they are, and so we can have our cake and eat it too, I guess is what I'm saying.
I may be misunderstanding, but I think the language we've already approved is more broad
Under the elected boards?
under the elected boards, but potentially unclear of who it is applying to. If you're proposing, take that language, move it to.
No, I'm proposing take the bylaw language on ethics for town meeting.
Got it.
And add that to the town meeting section of the charter, so we'll have an ethics statement under town meeting.
All right.
And then, as Jess said, we
I
could
gotcha.
reference it in that.
Yeah, we can
So
then
then-
add to section 3.1, saying, like, for conflict of interest pertaining to representative town
Town
meeting,
meeting.
refer to Article 2.
So then the only question is, how do we feel about the concern that Pat raised that altering that language becomes more difficult? Because right now, that exists in a bylaw and town meeting.
Both would then exist in the charter.
Both would then exist in the charter.
Both would then exist
And so
in the
then it would
charter.
mean we'd have to live with the fact that it's harder to change that language in the future.
Correct.
Correct.
And that's fine. I mean, from
We're
my,
talking ethics.
yeah.
Our talking ethics,
I think I'd have to see what the language actually.
Yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
well, we will. We're not going to vote on it. I think we're just giving Pat an indication as to what direction to go in. So I think I don't know, we don't need to vote, but are people in generally, if I do a straw poll with cans in favor of seeing what Pat can draft,
Is
that would
there-
accomplish those things?
is there a concept of making a statement about ethics in the charter and having it refer to explicit bylaws? Or does that not fly because it's a subordinate document?
I believe flies in that face of what we're trying to do here.
Well, but there's a million places where that's going to happen,
Yeah.
where, the details,
I think,
the bylaws are more flexible, and we're always making compromises along the way to say, look, sometimes you've got to
yeah. I guess-
allow the bylaw to be the place where that might live.
Well, I would suggest that we let Pat come up with some language, see how we feel about it, and if you still feel the same way, then we raise it at that
Was your
time.
answer in the affirmative or the negative to that statement?
To your statement, it's essentially that I wouldn't put this entire bylaw verbatim into it.
Okay, so you'll do
I'm going to
something.
summarize it, and I can give language that, allows you to make have some leeway to change things not change the language of the charter, but either refers partially to the bylaw for additional guidance or not. But, let me think about it and
Got it.
draft some language. It's theoretically possible to do what you do, what you're talking about. I'm just want to write something that the whole committee
Yeah.
can discuss and decide whether it's going to go forward.
I don't think we're the first ones wrestling with this. My opinion of what may be unethical may be different than somebody else's. If someone's a real estate broker, can they vote on a zoning change which may affect property they own, sell, or what have you? Question, it's interpretive. If I've got a child who's in special needs, do I have to abstain from the accommodated account? You're going to get different opinions depending upon the 10 people you ask. You may get 12 different opinions.
I think that, whenever you have things like ethical standards, you're going to have, interpretation and questions. So it's one of those things that if somebody challenges something, I challenge the fact that, Betsy voted on that because her husband's the whatever, that's when that will come to play. What we're talking about is making a statement of principle and policy kind of through the charter. So how it's implemented and how it's legally interpreted in terms of who's violating, that's kind of for the lawyers, you guys to duke out.
I would
But-
rather avoid facing those situations if we can. And I think that was why we've got the language in the bylaw that we have.
Yeah. So I'm going to let's let Pat take a stab.
Yeah.
Let's see what she comes up with, and then we can move on.
Of course, if it happens, do we ask Bill to rule on it? I don't think Bill wants that.
It's a conflict of interest, right? No. Okay, bonding, I don't think we're in a position to talk about that, but what that is we had a while ago said we're going to have Patrick come talk to us about the bonding situation and where it should be, et cetera. Everybody got the town administrator, this is what changed and what didn't. Jess actually put together another summary of it, which really is easy and clearer and all the rest of it, which I have forwarded to Pat and asked her to comment on before I send it out to everybody. So I'd like to defer this conversation until we get that document, because it does simplify pretty much what that other document. I want to, we don't have much time left, and there are a couple of things I really wanted to do, and I'll do this one fast. I promised that I would give you, when I get emails, letters, or whatever from people on issues, that I'd share them with you. So this came to me as a question, as a suggestion. So here's the suggestion. I'm wondering if there's been any BGRC discussion about adding language to the charter that requires a regular annual review for the town administrator by the select board. I believe the school committee reviews the superintendent annually, and my quick Google search, many towns have TA review requirement in their charters. This seems to be like a common sense and a good practice to me. Thoughts? Agree? Should we consider?
I'm a big fan of annual reviews.
Yeah.
Initially, that feels like, good oversight.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I just have a show of hands, people who think that's a good idea?
I think that's being done.
It apparently is not.
Yeah.
Apparently not.
It's been a bit. I watched it at the select board meeting last night. They discussed it, and they are planning to do it for this year, but they also, one of the
I don't believe
board
it.
members was asking if we had talked about that and thinks it should really be in some kind of the documentation that we're creating.
Okay, so if we could draft that into.
I mean, I quickly drafted like two sentences, but, which I looked at this, I happen to look at North Andover's charter, but similar languages in each, and we can either, if you want me to just.
Read it
run
quick,
now?
sure.
Okay. And I added, it's section 4.6 at the end of the town administrator section, evaluation. A, the select board shall annually evaluate the performance of the town administrator. The board shall adopt a written set of procedures and criteria which shall form the basis for the evaluation. B, a copy of the evaluation shall be provided to the administrator. I mean, it's just very simple.
And it's not a public document.
The reason it's vague as to that is because the public records law will decide if it's a public document, and we are not necessarily.
Well, that's something that goes in the personnel file, so
Right,
generally
right.
that's restricted.
Yeah, I would think that. So that language, did everybody understand it? Need to hear it again?
Read it one more time.
Sure. Section 4.6, evaluation. A, the select board shall annually evaluate the performance of the town administrator. The board shall adopt a written set of procedures and criteria which shall form the basis for the evaluation. B, a copy of the evaluation shall be provided to the town administrator.
Is the,
Why would it be just a...
Provided and maintained, maybe we should, I mean, it's like provided, but also you want to make sure that they're kept too? Or is that provided just enough? Okay.
Is it public? Would that review be public?
as I said, I would leave that up to the public records law to decide that. I think their, written set of policies and criteria will probably be public because that's their, policy of how to do that. And I would leave it up to, the public records law, whether that's be done in an executive session. In some cases, they may waive their right to have it private. It's a much more complex analysis, so.
I'm just curious, what's the use of it if it's not public?
If it's not public?
Yeah. What purpose?
For his own.
Holds the person accountable for performance. It's a criteria as to whether you're going to keep them or not to keep them, help.
Just like any.
It needs improvement and all that jazz, right? I mean,
Yeah.
goals, I hope, and objectives. Goals.
And also for the board to be on the same page with how they feel like the town administrator is performing.
Pat, can you remind us if goals were actually included? Because that was a part of the conversation. Was that included in your language?
It says the board shall adopt a written set of procedures and criteria, which shall
For
form the
evaluation.
basis for the evaluation.
Yeah, goals would be.
Or is that implied? Is that what you're saying? Or should we add the word goals?
I think if you get into goals, then you're getting down into the nits. You're going to do that, then you got to add a whole bunch of other stuff. I think we're going from nothing to now we're saying there has to be an annual review. I think that is a step in the right direction for charter purposes.
And that's a charter.
And a charter thing. And then in terms of how that process, and my guess is that Burlington probably has an HR process that talks about what you do with reviews and how it works and whether you have peer input and all the rest of that stuff, right? So,
And an equal part is the duty of the select board to just create the procedures and criteria for it.
Why is it just the town administrator? There's a couple of positions that report directly to the select board, the treasurer, and there's one other. And all the other various people, is that done through the town administrator?
for the ones that will
Rather than-
report to the town administrator, I would assume there's a policy. They're in charge of HR policies and its implementation, so the administrator is already responsible for making sure those happen.
Does that need to be written?
Huh?
Does that need to be written in here somewhere?
It's already in there through the HR policies.
It is.
Well, I'm about 100% sure there's a policy on performance reviews. I'll verify that, but I'm pretty sure there is. I'll ask Reggie.
So this document is for the benefit of the select board and the town administrator mainly, if I understand it correctly, and then does the outcome of it have like a quantifiable impact on compensation or something like that, or how does that work? So if it says needs improvement, does it mean that it goes to a certain score? Sorry. That goes to a certain score, then if it says needs improvement, then someone can trace and said, okay, then the salary is going to be this.
I would say that lives within HR policies.
Or
That's
within.
not something you want to put in a charter.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious how that works, though.
Yeah, I would interpret that as if somebody's not performing, then they shouldn't get a raise. But that's a different issue.
I mean,
Right now, they will be operating under an employment contract with the
Right.
town administrator, so it will be subject to something to be taken into consideration when they're going through the terms of that employment contract, whether it's going to be renewed, whether there's a point in the contract or not that raises are considered.
The town administrator is the only one with the contract. The treasurer doesn't have a contract, I believe, but reports directly to the select board. There's one other position, is that the town accountant, or
Yeah.
there's two positions that are accepted from the normal
right,
reporting process.
right. So should we outline this same concept for those positions in order to ensure that the same,
Well, then we'd have to go through each board. Same thing with planning staff.
not,
No, because they report to the
Right.
board. Well, no, you're right, because the HR policies apply to the select board.
Right.
So they would be like any other board that would have to follow the policies of the town.
So you either leave it to the policies or every single board with staff you need to evaluate as a part of this charter. You can't just limit it to people that report into the select board.
Right. This one is a little different in that it's a,
It's outside Human Resources, it's a contract.
Right, it is the supervisor of human resources kind of thing. It's like
Yeah.
the Uber supervisor. So I think it maybe makes sense to put it in there, but I think the HR policy stuff might actually apply to all the other board's employees.
Right.
I'm going to validate that with Reggie. I'll call him tomorrow.
I guess the question would be, the particular carve-outs, I don't remember, for the town administrator were appointment and removal carve-outs, right? For the position
Treasurer,
Jack
Yeah,
I
referring
think it
to.
was the town accountant, but I could be,
But there were not carve-outs during the statement of the HR policy,
Right.
which the town administrator has authority over. So I think I follow the logic here that
Okay.
this one is required because everyone else ends up being covered by the HR functions of the thing.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, so are we in a position where anybody wants to make a motion to include that?
Moved. So moved.
Seconded.
Okay.
and the language is?
Yes.
Right.
Read it one more time?
Section 4.6, which is the town administrator section, evaluation. A, the select board shall annually evaluate the performance of the town administrator. The board shall adopt a written set of procedures and criteria which shall form the basis for the evaluation. B, a copy of the evaluation shall be provided to the town administrator.
There's the criteria and a copy of the results. So the criteria must be written. And give me the second part, after the criteria must be written.
B was a copy of the evaluation shall be provided to the town
A
administrator.
copy of the evaluation pursuant to the criteria.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Okay. Bill?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes?
Corey?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Russ?
Yes.
Karthik?
Yes.
Eileen?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Me, yes, that's 11-0. Thank you very much. Now, I know everybody wants to run out, but I want two announcements to make. We are having the community input session on the 17th of June. It's going to be in the, wherever I am, over there, is in the it's in the
Human
COA.
Services Building.
Human Services Building, in the Murray
Murray Kelly Room.
Murray Kelly Room.
Yeah, not the Marie Kelly.
Murray Kelly Room. So I'm hoping everybody can make it. It starts at 7. Also, I will send around a schedule that we are doing briefings for boards and committees. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we have like 9 that are going to be happening, including the town. We had our first one tonight with the Rules Committee. It was pretty interesting, and we'll have the questions, but it was everything from why are you doing anything? Everything works. Don't touch it if it's not broken, and you're going to make things a lot more confusing. To people who were, I think, very generally supportive of what we were proposing. And I don't know if you guys have any other comments that you want to share about that.
I think we got a good sense of the way things work in the Rules Committee. That was helpful, informative for us.
Right, right. And I think it was really clear, like, our recommendation that the bylaws relative to town meeting committees be reviewed and evaluated, because they were one committee who had no clue what it was that the bylaws said that they were supposed to do. And one person said, I don't really need to know, I just need to come to the meetings. That was the comment. I believe that was a quote. So that was interesting meeting. So I think these are going to be pretty interesting. The next one is Thursday night, a virtual one with Human Services. General bylaw review is going to be next after that. And I think that might be virtual as well. And then capital budget is going to be on the 18th. Planning board, we're still trying to get our way into that one, because I think that's really important. And then the select board, that's the other date on July 13th. I'm hoping we can get on their agenda on that day to do a briefing for them. And if you can come, it would be great. So if you have nothing else to do on July 13th, at whatever, I'll send out a notice on that. The other ones we're dancing around getting schedules for. So lots and lots going on.
Other business?
Yes.
Can I ask that any document we sent arrives in a form I can just click print, and I don't have to save, change the format, and print?
Sure. I think two things. One is I want to make sure everybody puts pages and dates on the document so that we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah,
which I
this is
think we're doing.
beautiful. It says, it's got a footer, every page, draft. This doesn't. I'm accumulating an awful lot of paper, so I think every page on its footer should have a date on it.
Yeah.
And a page number.
Yep. I agree.
Because, the pile is getting deep.
I agree. All righty. Is there, I know that Matt has been working on, Matt will put this on the agenda for next time, but he has sent out the Google document to everybody with the things that we have decided on, and also some things that we have not yet done. And if you just would please take a look at that, refer to your notes, and if there's anything that is missing on that, I'm more concerned about that right now, is like, is there a decision that we decided to defer, and should that be on there? Is there a decision you thought we made and it's not showing up there? So if you have questions about that, it's really important that every one of you go through it and send Matt, and only Matt, so we don't violate any open meeting rules, your comments or things, and then we can review all of that together. Okay? That's your homework assignment. Eileen?
What are we doing with these flyers, anything?
Flyers. The flyers that were handed out, if you can share them, post them, put them where, I don't know, wherever you go. Laura's supposed to be putting them up around town, but, well, if you don't see it and you go to a building, you feel free to throw some tape on it and throw it up there. And share it with people you know, so we can get people to come.
Since we did nothing with either of these documents, these are going to be good at the next meeting?
Correct, because Pat's actually going to update the charter with the stuff we just did, and so, yeah. But, to the extent, I think we need to dedicate some time, and maybe, I don't know, the next group, once we've got through the administrative part, is the, I'm blanking, what comes next?
In the charter?
Yeah.
We also have elections to talk about, and the recall provision, and then we get into general provisions and transition.
It's like, what percentage?
Elections is very small, a section, it's...
Well, I'm wondering, we'll talk about the agenda, but maybe we talk about elections, and then maybe review the charter stuff that we have. I need Pat to kind of give us some guidance as to when we go back and review the charter. That's one of the reasons why I want to make sure everybody's giving Matt those things, because there are going to be questions that have come up, like, wait a minute, I thought we put this in the charter, or we didn't make that decision yet, kind of thing. So we need to have that information in order to have that discussion. So I'll send around the agenda. I'll try to get it out earlier the next time, so you'll know exactly what it is we're going to do, and we will approve all the minutes at that time as well. And we'll try to get the minutes out the Friday before the meeting so that people have a chance to review it. Okay, any other business? I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.